Now, on the screen is the melee damage res. As I'm going to edit this in post recording, I will be showing you guys a few things to take note of. So first, let's go take a look at Yuna. So for Yuna, there is a few things that I should talk about, and that is the fact that she has a 700 meter, not 700 meters, 700 or 7 meter burn radius. So this is her aura. It's around 7 meters. And we know this because a patch has changed her burn radius from 500 to 700. While we also know the confirmation of the melee range has been reduced from 700 to 500. Now, a thing to mention here is that since we know what Yuna's is, we can measure pretty easily. We can kind of eyeball where 500 would be. But keep in mind that it is actually the outer edge of it that is actually effective. So this might be around 750, 800 on the outer edge of the meter on how long their aura is actually, and that's how it kind of calculates. The reason why we're calculating all this is because melee damage and range damage is a very important part about gearing, and we definitely do want to discuss about that. So this is obviously where the boss gets the burn damage in a sense. Anyways, moving on to that, the way we're actually going to record, or not record, but look at this, is with Gabriel. Now you can see that he has a passive where it basically forces, in a sense, everyone in his range to take less siege damage and all that good stuff, right? Well, something that we figured out is that he has a 5 meter range. However, the outer circle, the outer edge, is actually 6 meters. So that's why you can see when an air unit like this does like 16 damage to him, right outside 83 damage, and probably 100 crit, 135 crit. It's fair enough. 5% up or down on damage, because that's how the formula works, right? And if he's in there, he's gonna take 21 damage and 22, and then 116 for regular hits. Now the outer edge of this circle is a little bit inside here, so that's where the 500 range is. But once he gets pushed out a little bit, right there, as you can see, it's starting to do less damage. Why is that? It's because Gabriel's is actually 6 meters, and Irie's is the only one, I think, with 5 meters on the outer edge. So the outer edge is kind of what dictates where it is. So this is around a little bit more than 5 meters. Now that's basically how you would calculate the melee distance of a character, and hopefully this helps a lot, because I definitely fucked that up on the other ones. Other things we know is the Minato 5 meters is bugged against ground units, and also Kyle's barricade is 13 meters for the small one. So if you want to measure that way, you can. But yeah, Gabriel and most other auras are 6 meters on the outer edge, versus obviously their own circle. It's pretty much kind of based on where they are and all that good stuff, right? So hopefully that helps on you how to gauge the distance on melee and ranged. Gabriel's again is 6 meters pretty much, while Iris is 5, and if it touches the outer edge of it, pretty much it will activate the aura. But the melee range, finally, it is 5 meters as stated in the patch notes. 5 meters. As you see in the picture, I will show again. That is basically the range. Now, moving on to the next part of the video. This is probably the longest part of the video, and it is explaining damage resistance. Now, something we want to show with damage resistance is something like this. So, we see that defense is a flat number, right? And it transfers into 60% decreases in incoming damage. This is basically damage decrease, damage reduction in a sense. And what this does is obviously it makes you take less damage, but it has a cap of 80%, as you can see in the unit stats. You can see that defense decreases damage, but what people don't know is that it has a cap to up to 80%. Now, that's interesting, right? You might not realize that defense has a cap, but 80% is definitely the cap. What does this mean? Not only does that have a cap, the ground damage res also has a cap of 80%. The melee damage res also has a cap of 80%. But the thing that a lot of people don't know is that you actually want to count all of this together into one simple damage formula. As I'll show that up on the screen now and explain briefly. Basically, the whole thing isn't additive. It's not defense 60% plus 44% plus 24%. That's like what, fucking 125%, something like that. It doesn't work that way. The formula basically shows you how it works. You can look at that on your own time if you want. But what I'm going to explain to you is basically, if you have anything other than 80%, anything higher than that, it will not deal more damage. Now, this is very interesting, I'd say, for the most part. But basically, if you're overstacking all of this, and it reaches over 80% in PvE anyways, you're not going to take less damage. An easy way, we will be able to test that later, but basically, for example, if you have 60% defense, that is going to go into the first variable, the first box in a sense, and on the second one, you will be calculating pretty much every single damage res in the game, which is anti-ground damage res. You have melee res, range res, damage taken res is basically kind of part of that group of the two. And that's something we will prove again, that damage taken is indeed part of that equation of res, and it doesn't actually overall affect the formula at the end. It is within this group, and that means it actually kind of sucks in a sense. So other than that, we also have class res, which is like strikers, snipers, rangers, defenders. We have origin res, which is like counters, mechs, soldiers, etc. We also have anti-air, all that good stuff. All of that goes into the same group, into the second group. Add that all together, or minus it, either one, depends on what it is. If it's addition, then that's if you have anti-ground damage, anti-damage in general. Minus is pretty much res. Other than that, we also did find out something, and that is AoE damage res. Now, AoE damage res is actually the final multiplication or final product of everything. And that is obviously if they have AoE damage. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if it's intended afterwards that it was found out on. But this is probably why operators are so good, is because AoE damage res actually applies after all of this. So the damage is further reduced on AoE damage. Now, what does this mean? It means that even if everything hits 80% and is capped on damage, AoE damage res will reduce it further from AoE damage, like ballistas. Ballistas is one of the ways we tested this, and it basically does way less damage with AoE damage res maxed out on operators. Now, that's explaining how it basically works, right? Hopefully the code was, or hopefully the formula was up on the screen. Now, Chifuyu has a bit of things. He obviously has her range damage res, which in turn basically means that she's getting 10% damage res as well as the 22% damage res here. And that is more than enough to basically kind of complete this defense damage res if you also had roll advantage as well. So if we go into practice tool here, we can see that Chifuyu actually doesn't take as much damage because these are rangers. Obviously we knew that. But the AoE roll damage res basically counts towards the fact that they are also rangers, and the roll advantage and disadvantage counts towards that damage res portion of the formula. As you can see, you obviously take a lot less damage from its air, all that good stuff, right? But yeah, that's basically kind of showing the roll advantage within Chifuyu, as well as some other things. But some things that I wanted to show you is basically the Xiong calculations that we did. So in the Xiang calculations video, basically, we can see that Xiang has 29.4% ground damage res, 42.3% range res, and it basically took around 6,000 damage from uh the boss, which here, and that basically uh shows how much damage, right, that she takes with all this res. Obviously, if you want to watch this video, it is in the description below. All the videos that I use are in the description below. But the big thing here is that you can see that this is how much damage she would take with 29% ground res, 42% range res, and she takes how much damage, right? And if we want to do the calculation here, I actually do that as well. And I can show you that how it kind of looks like up on the screen right now. But basically, that's pretty much how it would look like if you were to input res for Xiang and ground damage res as well. Range damage res, ground damage res, all that would calculate together, as well as her basic defense, which is around 35% defense. So it would kind of look like, obviously, without saying the parentheses, it would look like 1 minus 1 minus 0.3542, which is 35%, multiplied by the final product of all of the sums, the final sum of the anti-reses or anti-damages or roll advantage or roll all that stuff, right? So it would kind of look like 1 minus the product of, not the product, but actually, yeah, basically the product of the defense. That's what it is, yeah, 35%. So it'd be 1 minus 35%, and that would give you the damage res in a sense, multiplied by the sum of all of that, which would be 1 minus 0.72. And that would give you, in total, if after all the calculations, 81% damage res for Zhu Xiang. So that would basically show you how much damage she takes, which is this. But if we go further, if we had even more, like 45% ground res and 55% range res, you can see that she doesn't actually take that much more damage. If anything, she takes a lot more damage or a lot less damage, depending on the 5% up or down, and that's pretty much how the capped works. Defense and reses will always calculate together in that certain formula that I showed you. And if you want to learn how to optimize, that's pretty much how it kind of works. Obviously, you can test with A Hilda as well. With A Hilda, you obviously have an innate 110 stat value of 4,000, which is pretty much, or like 3,900 or something like that. It's pretty much like 95% ground, 95%, 75% defense, which is damage reduction, and pretty much you don't take that much damage at all. And with ground res, with some shitty substats and a HP defense set, it'll reach around like 80%, 81%, something like that. So this video is basically showing you how much damage A Hilda will actually take and how long she'll take to die, which is around 227, 226. You can see right there, she dies right here. Now with 45% ground res and 25% range res, we can actually see with that 80% damage resistance already from defense alone, it actually doesn't help her at all. So this basically concludes how it is proven on damage as well, in terms of it not going over 80% no matter what. We know that ground damage res caps at 80%, but defense doesn't show anything. This basically shows that defense is indeed calculated into the formula on how ground damage res is also calculated. So other than that, hopefully that makes a lot more sense to you guys. I think I did a little bit better job in my first few videos, but there's one last thing we want to test so you guys will be assured that this works in not just reses and stuff, but also the damage taken portion of it. Obviously in certain areas we can see that some people, like Ryan Ferrier, having 25% damage taken and a little bit of decent gear, right? He will basically take a lot less damage. So let's give him this gear. Some random HP here, right? So this gives him around 25% ground damage res and 25% melee damage res, which is definitely a huge part of all of this, as well as the fact that he already has 50% on his defense stat. So as we tested with Xiong already, and the calculations, we know that this is around plus 80% already. And if we go into this without Lake Superior, that's what I wanted to test out, we'll see that he takes pretty much a minimum amount of damage. And so this test basically shows you how much damage Ryan will take with max 80% gear. You can see that he does 900 miss, all that stuff. And once his buff actually activates, he takes a lot less damage. As you can see right here, a lot less damage and whatnot. So this is generally around what he has in terms of damage. But if we add in damage taken from either, you know, what's that called? Gleipnir armor type or Lake, and we can try Lake right now, and show the stats on Lake, because I'm not trying to be dumb. Am I stupid? Okay, whatever. You guys are just gonna, I mean, you guys already know, but you know that Lake gives you damage resistance, damage taken in general. So to prove the fact that damage taken is also added into the anti-reses and whatnot, we'll show right here. If this does around 1700 and all that good stuff, you can see that it actually doesn't increase at all. And right there, you can see already that even with all the passives and stuff, it deals the same amount of damage no matter what. And that's with an extra amount. Even the passive from Ryan Carrier of 25% extra damage taken, it doesn't do anything, because he already has the maximum amount of damage taken or damage resistance that he can build up. And that basically concludes this part of the video. If you have any questions on it, I'm sure people do. That's pretty much how it is. And if you need any help, hopefully you can ask some other people. You can ask in the comments below. But that formula that I have given you should be able to calculate basically what it is about. Now, let's start with the second portion of the video again, with the defense and stuff, but in the sense of PvE or PvP. Now we know that obviously you deal a lot less damage for what is it? The damage resistance defense, right? But what about PvP? So does that mean you don't need to stack that much ground damage res? Technically no, because in PvP you're actually facing off against other players who have, again, the same amount of ground resistance as you probably, but also the fact that they are able to, one, shred your defense with any skill, or two, they can also have anti-damage, which is part of the formula, as you see right there. So even with stuff like this, or stuff like minus 20% defense, if you're still above 80% defense by the end of all the calculations, you obviously will stake the minimum amount of damage that you would have taken if they had even more. But against something like 133% damage increase of all the calculations from anti-ground, anti-defender, natural roll damage advantage against defenders, if we use admin riflemen, they may be able to break all of that res down, but it still does count. All of that res is still included up on the calculations until it isn't. And pretty much, again, use the formula. But in PvP, yes, it's still viable to stack it. Yes, defenders would probably stack ranger res instead. Strikers, I would definitely recommend crit damage res, considering you're gonna get crit a lot and you don't have enough defense anyways to stop it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully this does help you out. Hopefully this was a little bit better. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this part of the video. Moving on. So there are a few things after this, and that is pretty much the third part of the video, and the fourth part, which is evasion and hit. So this part of the video, we're going to talk about crit damage res, Crit damage res is as you think it would do. It lowers the damage on crits. However, if you do have enough crit damage res over crit, it pretty much nullifies it for the most part, as far as we know. Besides that, this, in my opinion, and a lot of people think so too, is the dark tech of PvE. Pretty much, if you have this plus the stuff we discussed in the previous parts of damage res and defense, this pretty much further lowers the damage you'll actually take in bosses, specifically like danger close, and as well as a few other things. So danger close type A and B, as you can see here, this is a 110 Lin Xien, in which basically at a point Lin Xien will take less damage from crits. In this video, we are using like 1 melee and 1 range damage res from Lin Xien, for Lin Xien, Gordius, as well as the fact that he has a little bit of crit damage res, I believe, or maybe none at all. But this is a 110 Lin Xien, taking 10k crit, 6k damage, right? Now in this video, this one is very important in the sense that this is a level 100 Lin Xien with double ranged res Gordius and crit damage res. Let's see how much damage you actually do to the Lin Xien. It's taking 3.8k crits, 3.6k crit, 3.6k crit. Now this is around 6k, 7k less than the other video with a 110 Lin Xien. She is taking around range damage res right here, from where the boss's middle is, for the most part. I think bosses are hard to tell where the range is, but we can definitely see that Roy is definitely most likely in range of the 5 meters, while Lin Xien is definitely around 6 to 7 meters. And you can see that she's actually taking a lot less damage now with these accessories. So that is pretty much it for the crit damage res portion of this. I don't think I have to explain anything else, but this is pretty much the dark tech of PvE. In my opinion, if you want to gear for PvE and it helps a little bit in PvP, obviously it's nice to have the ground damage reses, the right melee or range damage reses. Maybe you can mix them if you want for a balance. Other than that, you can also get crit damage res on your armor, and for the weapon with Maze can run anti-ranger damage res for PvP for defenders. But if it's a striker and if you have Hummingbird, you can get crit damage res instead. Hummingbird only has crit damage res, so that is the option you'll probably go with. So that's 70% crit. I won't say that we know what the danger close A and B type A and B bosses crit chances, but it will definitely highly reduce the damage you're going to take. As we know, evasion is pretty much the dodge chance. Nothing else affects this. This is dodge chance. Hit is actually basically increasing the minimum amount of damage that you would actually do if they were to dodge. So hits is more or less the damage that you would be dealing if you were to do max damage on miss, basically. It closes the damage towards the maximum damage. So that's the interaction between hit and evasion. Now there is a couple of things that you should know that I will be listing as a subtitle somewhere around here or some shit, or maybe up here. Pretty much if you have enough hits over evasion, you will be able to guarantee a hit. However, it is not the flat numbers, it's pretty much the percents. So it's around like 1.9 times of evasion or hit to be able to guarantee a hit, because the formula is around like hit over hit plus 1500 for the hit calculation, 2%, and then the evasion is like evasion over evasion plus 800, and that's how you get evasion percent. So hit basically needs to be 1.9 times higher than evasion, and that's how you get the formula. Now the formula for hit, how much damage hit actually does versus evasion, will be listed on the screen. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm sorry for all the mistakes that were made in the past for these types of videos. Hopefully I'll make sure to find the most accurate truth, and I'll tell you guys about it. So this is the final revision of this video. I will be privating the other 2 videos that I made before. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later.